If you've ever felt like your life is just running on autopilot, like you're just going through the motions and every day is the same thing over and over again, you want to get out of the rut. You know things could be different, better, but just what that is, you're not sure. And you certainly don't know how to change it. Well, stay tuned, because I invited a life strategist and transformation expert on the show. And she will show you how to identify and change the things that are keeping you in a monotonous cycle. And she'll give you some strategies that can help you uncover and step toward your potential. It's coming up next. Stay tuned. Welcome to Shift or Get Off the Pot, the podcast that helps you get out of your head and into action so you can make your dreams your reality. Let's get to it. On today's episode, we are talking transformation. How do you actually transform your life? How do you get past all the little things that are in the way and create the life you want, or the life that you say you want? Well, today's guest knows all about that. She is someone I would consider a very wise, intuitive individual. She is a life strategist. She is a catalyst for change. She is the founder of a company called Tranquil Solutions, and you will soon hear why. She is a very calming presence. She's a speaker and an author and a coach, and I have known her for a number of years now. Please welcome Karen Rudolf.
Thank you so much, Kim. It's a pleasure and honor to be here with you once more.
Yeah, once more. We tried to do this before, but we had some technical difficulties. So at any rate, yeah, I'm so glad you're here. And honestly, I don't say that lightly about a very calming presence. And I love the name of your company because it is so fitting for you, because I do feel like being in sessions with you is like just relaxing. It's kind of like, tranquil. It's peaceful, because even though it's coaching, even though it's let's get down to business, let's get things done, you have a way, and I think this might be the intuitive side of you, but you have a way of keeping people centered and just present. And I say that because I started, let me see, I think I was in a group, and I don't even know how I got into that group with you, but I got into a group program with you years ago. And I just found it to be something that helped me to get back in touch or paying more attention to my intuition, because I am like, boom, 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 let's get it done. Let's go, action oriented. And at the same time, I'm highly intuitive. But there were times where I just kept sidestepping that. And that, when you do that, as you know, just kind of derails everything and takes you off course, right?
Absolutely. And it's so interesting that you say that, Kim, because I remember when it was a download for me. Tranquil Solutions was a download for me. And my girlfriend, who was in advertising up in New York, said to me, Karen, Tranquil Solutions is never going to fly. And I looked at her very blankly and said, that's like taking Karen away from me and stripping me naked. I mean, that was just something. It's who I am. It's who I be. And 3 years later, she came back to me and she says, you're absolutely right. It's like so who you are. So yeah, thank you for representing that for me.
It's a great name, and it's very fitting for you. But I love also that you just said, I had this download, because for years I've heard people say, I've had a download, or I had this download for a business, or I had a download for this, and blah, 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 blah. And I'd think, what the heck? I remember hearing Sylvester Stallone wrote Rocky, but he had this download and he got up and he just, and I'm thinking, I want a download. And I would run around going, why can't I have a download? Why can't I have a download? I'm so unclear. Why can't I have a download? But my focus was so on, I want the download, and I'm so unclear what's going on, rather than shifting my focus to paying attention and hearing, which is really what came about when I was working with you, because it was kind of like, oh, stay present and listen, because I was outside looking for all those things where I didn't realize I was already getting the downloads. I just didn't call them a download.
Exactly. Sometimes we forget to be present and to be silent enough to listen. And it's not just, I mean, I have my moments where I'm like on overdrive and it's like, okay, Karen, you know this stuff. Take a deep breath, calm yourself, and get present again. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I remember this. And, what was that I heard? And, that sort of thing. So it becomes fun for me. It becomes fun because I know I'm never alone.
That's a great point. I do firmly believe, and I do know just from my life experiences that I have, whom I call God. I was raised Christian. Always has my back and is always with me. And as I said, I would be like, oh, I didn't know I was getting a download, but I would get these intuitive hits, like these nudges, and sure enough, they were always 100%. And I started realizing, okay, how can I really start programming myself to pay attention to these more often, or program my mind to give me the solution while I'm sleeping so that when I wake up, I would have the solution? And you can actually do that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Often for myself, at least, and from a place of where I coach from, it's like really being in the present and asking myself, it's almost like a meditation in a sense. If you're standing in the present moment and clouds are going by and you're looking at the thoughts, which are as clouds, and you say, where am I standing now? Am I standing in the past? Take a step back. If you're standing in the future, step into the future, like in front of yourself. If you're thinking about yourself, either step to the right or the left. If you're thinking about others, choose which area it's going to be. But it makes you really present because you're now in a body context of movement. And when you start getting present to it, it becomes more of a flow. Oh, there it goes again. No, I'm not in the present. Bring me back to center. And then when you're doing something like that, it starts creating the awareness for really truly where you want to be. You have no control over a future, right? And that's actually where anxiety comes from, fear of the future that we have no control over, the anxiety of it all. And then depression is from me standing in the past, which again, the past is the past. And when you're not in the present is where you're going to find joy. So.
Very true. Being in the present, and you can't go back to the past and you have to let that go. But I know that a lot of times so much of our past dictates what we're doing in our life because it's those beliefs, right? It's the beliefs that we hold on to, forms the habits or the behavioral patterns that we aren't even consciously aware of, right?
Absolutely.
So sometimes you have to kind of look at that though, right? And say, okay, wait a minute, what's going on here? Because if we're talking about transforming your life, we're talking about creating change. Mm-hmm. Don't you have to kind of say, okay, I'm right here, but I'm not getting the results I want, or things aren't happening. Like, where do you start then to say, okay, I got to start making some changes?
Well, I always start with, I think it was 1633. I could have my dates a little off, but Shakespeare and Hamlet wrote, to thine own self be true. Mm. And the more you get to know yourself, the more I believe, and it seems to work for me and the people that I'm working with, it really, once you start getting the awarenesses of where it began, I mean, as a therapist, they bring you back and you're rehashing it. As a coach, I'm not doing that. I don't believe you are as well as a coach. You're touching on the past and saying, oh, pinpoint, that's what it is. That's the story that's holding you back. And we all form stories, right? Something happens to us between the ages of 1 and 6. We make it mean whatever we make it mean. I like to use the story of little Johnny. Little Johnny goes to the grocery store with mom, and I'm aging myself because all those cereal boxes with the little we used to have toys in them. It's like Cracker Jack boxes. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's out there now.
I don't know. They probably still do. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't eat cereal. Right? So at any rate, little Johnny goes, and everything is eye level for little Johnny, right? With all the toys. And mom is going, come on. We got to go. And Johnny's like, yeah, I'm coming. And as he's making his choice of cereal, he looks up and mom is gone. And now all of a sudden in little Johnny's mind, he's made it mean that he's been abandoned. Now, from the ages of 6 to 13, he's sort of still grumbling at mom, and he's just getting into puberty, and he's looking at girls going, oh, they're going to abandon me too. So he's already starting to form these contexts because of the experiences he had with mom. And between the ages of 13 and 18 to 21, it's like now he's looking for evidence that all women are going to abandon him, and they all suck, and whatever story goes along with it, because one thing begets another, begets another, begets another. There's always, always, always going to be a cause and effect. So until we start identifying the stories and shifting some of the context of the story, yeah, that served little Johnny when he was 1 to 6 years old. But is it the truth that mom really abandoned me, or did mom just go around the corner because she was in a hurry? So when little Johnny starts looking at that and looking at the truth of it and asking himself and identifying, could this really, mom was just in a hurry? Can you forgive it, let it go, and say, okay, take a breath. Not all women are going to screw you or whatever. And can you be okay with that? Then what story? Because when there's an empty void, you now have to fill it with something else.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's the same thing with trauma clearing. We clear the hole, then there's a hole left. What are you going to fill it with? That's a choice. So what choices are you going to make to live a fulfilled, happy, joyous life of tranquility? And, what is that going to look like? You get to choose, and you're going to falter back. You're always going to falter back to where you were. But the more you identify it, the more you can say, oh, there it is again. And you change it and say, I'm going to step back into the present where I am now.
Yeah, you have to absolutely fill the void. And it is something you have to continuously do, just because, those patterns have already come into you, or those beliefs, those ideas that we've held on to from something. And it almost sounds like what you're describing almost sounds like a stretch, like, oh my gosh, how did you get to feeling like all women, are not great, and they're going to just abandon you, or they're going to hurt you, or whatever. They're just not worth being around because my mom walked around the corner in the grocery store. But I will tell you that you just described pretty much what happened to me as a young child. And really standing after a 4th of July celebration and standing with my dad and my sister at a concession stand, and my brother and mom went back to the car, and I'm reading the board and looking up, daydreaming, and they're trying to get me to go, and they went around the corner, and I freaked out. I mean, I ran down to my mom and my brother, and then I ran back. But here's what's interesting. Mm-hmm. I was so embarrassed that I got lost. I didn't get lost. They just walked around the corner, but I took it upon myself as being the one that did something wrong. In other words, I didn't pay attention. Yeah. So I think what's interesting is that when you start to look at this stuff, how much that this can start to impact our lives or show up with what we believe about ourselves. Like, here I am, the kind of person that's taking it as it's my problem. Absolutely. And I was the one that wasn't being responsible. I was 3. Or 4. I was 4 at the time. So I just think that's interesting. But then you start to think, oh, how can this start showing up in other areas of life, which I don't think we oftentimes connect those dots, which I'm glad you brought that up, because there's sometimes it's just these small little things. But when you look, this is why it's so important to look at what are the patterns that are showing up in your life. Are you having failed relationship after failed relationship? Are you having money problems? Are you having issues with people not paying their invoices or whatever because maybe you don't value yourself? I mean, it's just all part of that, which is, absolutely. I think what you're saying, present to everything that's going on. And then you can say, oh, where's this coming from?
And most people don't want to really look at it, Kim, because it like you said, the embarrassment, or people are going to think I'm bad, wrong. I mean, I remember everything is interconnected. Everything in life is interconnected in some way, shape, or form. And, between your body, your mind, and your spirit, it's all interconnected. And I remember a time when I was 5, they were doing something on the board, and I had worse vision than I do. I had corrected surgery, but I had created myself to be blind, which is another story for another day. But I was sitting at the front desk, and the teacher, I just remember her looking like Cinderella. They had tiles, and I raised my hand, and I'm like, very studious. I don't have enough tiles. And she started laughing. at the front of the class. I'm getting the chills just thinking about it. She starts laughing. The whole class started laughing. And in the moment, I had no idea why the class was laughing. And I'm thinking, what's wrong with me? Right? I wasn't getting it. She comes over to my left side. It's that vivid for me. She comes over my left side, puts her right hand on my back, and she points to the side blackboard. I'm really aging myself now. And on the blackboard, it says April Fool's Day. And I had no relatedness to April Fool's Day. And all I wanted to do was hide underneath the table. So here's a perfect example of what we're talking about. So I want to hide under the table. I declare in that moment, I must be stupid because I'm not getting it. Mm-hmm. Right? So now I've just labeled myself at 5 years old.
Yeah.
Fast forward, right? I'm not open, and I will not. Right, there's always a tag on, right? And I will never open my mouth again to make myself appear stupid or not knowing, right? So fast forward, I go. Teachers will ask me, Karen, what's the answer to whatever, and I'm like, I don't know. I thank goodness I was doing well on my exams. Got through nursing school, everything else. I don't know. I asked someone else, I don't know, right? Well, I had created that pattern of not knowing whether I knew or not, and I did know, but for the longest time, I thought I was stupid. Well, I'm far from stupid. I might do stupid things now and then that I can laugh at myself at, but I'm not a stupid person by any stretch. But because I had been in that pattern for so long, when I get overwhelmed over something, I default back to that not knowing, which triggers me procrastinating or getting distracted or not doing what and then but now, because I'm aware of that, I can pause and say, oh, there it is again, okay. And then I'm like, and just I keep on track and I continue the action. But until I was able to identify it, it was just like, I don't know what's going on, but I'm just not focusing, and there must be something else wrong with me,
Yeah.
And a lot of people will find that and say, give me a pill.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, no, you don't need a pill. You have all the answers within you.
Yeah. So that's so true. And that you also said in that there's always a tag on, and that is key, because it's all of a sudden, that's where the meaning, that's where we've given it meaning now. So therefore I must be, and so therefore I'm not going to do this anymore.
Exactly. Now you have justified it.
Well, yeah, but I always say, for myself, and I tell people this, I wear a rubber band on my wrist sometimes, and I can notice if I'm supposed to be doing something. And like you said, procrastination, I'm distracted. Oh, I got to go do this. I'm working from home. I throw laundry in right now, all these little things, right? And then you think, what am I doing? Stop in your tracks. And I'll snap that little rubber band, because it makes me think, okay, what's going on here? Bring it back and let's go, okay, what's really going on? But I agree with you. I don't think that we have to go back and just peel away all the different layers of the onion. I mean, that's going to take a lifetime. I think that we can look at it and say, what's happening here? And then what I've learned is, since we have two nervous systems, right? Parasympathetic and then the central nervous system, and how you can just kind of use that and breathe into something. And it's helped me to really change the story or the story that I was telling myself about maybe a situation that happened in childhood. But I think it's fascinating. Why do all these things in childhood come back to just maybe keep us stuck later in life?
I have to wonder if it's supposed to keep us stuck or not. But everything compounds, right? We're making machines. So we make up all these stories to protect ourselves, right? Yeah. Because we feel this need to fight or flight, and it doesn't have to be the truth, not necessarily, Just because I broke up with somebody doesn't mean that it's the end of the world. No, I mean, I had a really hard life is going to give us lemons all the time. It's whom we're becoming in the process. What are you learning from all these experiences that's going to have you respond rather than react? And that's where I think it builds and builds, it builds. So I believe that we start at, just my personal take on it is we start out with these experiences, and it's the becomingness of stepping into our authenticity later in life. As we grow and learn from these experiences, it's who we're becoming in the process.
Yeah, it's definitely who we're becoming in the process. And I think when you kind of look at things, you can sit back and say, wow, I can see now how so many of these things connected
Absolutely.
to bring me to where I am now. And because there were times where I would say, why am I not moving faster? Why haven't I not done this yet? Why am I? And I would get mad at myself. Like
Yeah.
I would be the one that, again, going back to you're the one to blame, Kim. You didn't follow your parents around or your dad around the corner. But it was like, why didn't I get this done? How come I didn't? I'm smart. Why didn't I get that done faster? I knew it. I just didn't act on it. Right. And I would kind of look at that and then I'd have to sit back and say, wait a minute, maybe it's not right timing.
Mhm.
Maybe it's that I am moving forward, but I have to have a few other things worked out. In a sense, I just had to give myself grace
Yeah.
around it because it was very easy for me to start beating myself up as being the one that's, oh, I'm not getting it done fast enough, which really that wasn't up to me.
No, but that's a perfect example, Kim, of the tag on and how the impacts cause and effect. Because I'm willing to bet you become cyclical with it. As soon as something happens, you go back to that default of what did I do wrong, or I'm not doing it right, or whatever the scenario is for you. We all have it. We all have some form of it, and it's going to manifest in some way, shape, or form. And if we don't manage it, then it manifests within our bodies. Mm-hmm. And that's where the dis-ease comes into play later on in life. And the more you're holding on to that guilt or grief or what am I doing wrong, your body's going, no, and it keeps knocking louder and louder. And maybe it starts out as a headache and then it goes into a migraine, or maybe it becomes, worse yet later on, diabetes, heart attack, cancers, etc. So for me, what I'm noticing in the patterns are creating, until we emote it and getting out of our system, it creates the dis-ease. And coming from a nursing background and stepping out of a nursing background, because I remember very vividly as a child, it was like I felt that children were to be seen, not heard. And fast forward, I go into nursing career, and the doctors say, "Here's a script, send the patient home." And I'm looking at it going, but you're masking the problem, like
Band-Aid
the symptoms.
approach.
You're not getting it. And they're like, "Do you want this job? Do what you're told." Again, not being seen or heard. So that kept replaying in my mind as well. And I said no. So when I stepped into becoming a catalyst for change, it impacted my family. It impacted my mother. And when I found her on the floor and she was in a fetal position, I didn't see my mother. I saw somebody who had a very low self-esteem, low self-worth. I saw a child on the floor, and right next to her were 19 medications. 3 different doctors, 19 medications, because she started out with a headache to get attention. And she had, at 72 years of age, she started doing artwork, and she had no one to show her artwork to because she was 2.5 hours away from me, and my kids were little, and I was doing 6 hours of carpooling, and it was like, yeah, Mom, okay, whatever. In reality, you cry wolf often enough, it became, a mile later,
Yep.
And sadly, when she was slurring her words, I dropped everything and went to her, and 3 doctors later, 19 medications. She kept going back because the migraine created nausea and then from the medication, and she'd show them their next painting, and then they'd give it, what do? They give you another script. So 19 medications, I went, no, because we can be our own advocates. Mm-hmm. We don't have to lean onto the old stories and the old way of being of not enough and not heard and not loved and all of that, because maybe you experienced it, maybe you felt it along the way. I'm sure not maybe we did. Let's get real. But again, does it have to be the truth? People love us the best way they're able to love us. Is it perfect? No. I mean, my mom used to beat me to a pulp,
Oh my
But
gosh.
but yeah, today it would be child abuse. But
Yeah.
again, looking back on who she was dealing with whatever she was dealing with, and I've learned to step into forgiveness because the forgiveness isn't necessarily for her; it's for me and my sanity to move forward. Right? She was stressed out after my dad left, so she had no tools to manage her stress and her anxiety and her frustrations. So she held it in, which created the diseases, which created the cancers later on, which was her demise. She passed. So,
Okay, that's an interesting point because I know you're talking about forgiveness, and obviously that's very important to be able to do that. And but you said it was the forgiveness for you,
yes,
because I just want to be very careful here and maybe just drawing that a little bit so people understand this, because it's not really excusing the behavior, because it
no,
would be one thing to excuse the behavior, because I think it's easy to do that. I mean, I grew up in an alcoholic household, so I could easily say, I understand why my brother did X, Y, and Z
yeah,
because he was an alcoholic. But at the same time,
yeah,
that's excusing that behavior, and I can forgive him, but you have to be clear on those two things.
exactly, exactly. But the reality was, in order for me to move past and be in the present moment and step out of the past, I had to forgive it for myself.
Well, you have to acknowledge it. I think that's what you're talking. You have to acknowledge it, and go ahead, and it's okay to feel the pain, because that way it
Yes,
shifts you from being a victim. It's
exactly.
very easy to be a victim otherwise. I mean, my mom's mother raised her when she was 12, right? She lost her mom and everything. So she
Right,
basically raised my mom, and her mom raised her and whatever. So anyway, she was very verbally abusive to my mom, telling her like, you are an unwanted child, blah, blah, blah. I thought I was done, but all that kind of stuff. Right. So, but my mom hung on to that for so long, and we would see her, and she completely undervalued herself. And it didn't matter how many times we talked with her. It was for her, it became more of, I understand why she did that, but it was never, I think the forgiveness wasn't there, or she couldn't quite grasp that, because she was in victim mode.
exactly.
She did this, therefore, there's the tag on,
Yeah,
therefore I'm this, therefore this is a lot in life that I have to live with. And it's like, no, no, no. If we're talking about transformation, you
exactly.
have to let that victim mentality go, as hard as it is.
Exactly. Exactly. But and it will always come back and sneak into those little crevices. But the awareness comes when it sneaks in to say, oh, there it is again. Oh, Karen, there's that stupid thing coming in again. No, 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 no. It's there, it's popping its ugly little head, but that's not my truth. I don't need to prove anything to anybody. All I need to do is prove to myself and realize and have come to learn that I am not a stupid person by any stretch of the imagination. I do stupid things now and then, and it's like, okay, there it goes again, Karen, you're doing that thing again. It's like, but I laugh at myself now, and it's like, let it go. I don't attach myself. I don't make myself guilty. I really grant myself grace, right? I'm not looking to a past any longer because the past isn't serving me. I have no control over what was. I have control over the moment. That's it, which is going to create the future that I want.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. So beautifully said. I think it's interesting that you use the term life strategist as opposed to life coach, because, I mean, life strategist, it really connotes the fact that you are about planning and action and structure. And to me, that is an oxymoron with tranquil solutions. So I'm like, wait, this is very tranquil and peaceful and soul, and I would think relaxing, but yet at the same time, this is where I think the catalyst for change comes in, right? Because it is more action oriented, things that you do. And when you start working on, let's get things moving.
Exactly. Exactly, because even though so many people will say to me, Karen, you bring such peace to the space. I hear that over and over again. Peace was taken, right? So, peaceful solutions. So I went into tranquil, but then I thought, you know what, that was a download. And tranquility, it takes awareness, it takes the power of choice. right? I mean, I was a victim. I was a victim for many, many, many years. I went through a very abusive relationship, verbally abusive relationship. I was a single mom for many years. Well, I was a single mom, period. Right? Sometimes I feel even through my marriage, I was a single mom. And um, coming from we're a processor environment, and my mother was a victim, very much a victim. And even though I saw it in her at that early age, I didn't recognize it, and I didn't know how to deal with it, and I didn't know how to deal with it within myself. But the more I saw it, the more it felt yuck on my body. It was just like, and it became a choice, like, how am I going to step into it? And it wasn't until I started getting divorced that uh, I had this moment of like, whoa, like, wait a minute, I'm not alone anymore. I've got three other little ones that are like looking up to me with these wide eyes going, oh my God, they're just as scared as I am. And I was so fearful of a future that's unknown, which is a big number one fear, other than talking on stage, right? So it was like, okay, who am I going to be? And thank goodness I had the wherewithal at the time, because I remember pausing, and my paralegal said to me, Karen, if you don't figure it out, the judge is going to figure it out for you. And I went, I have to be my own advocate, but not only my own advocate, but I'm the advocate of my children. What examples am I giving them? How am I modeling adulthood, motherhood, and womanhood to my three daughters if I'm being a victim and can't make a decision, and I'm a doormat and a people pleaser and all this other stuff? I mean, I was all of that more. There was no way, looking back, that I would have been even having this conversation with you, because I'd be looking down and walking 10 paces behind. That was literally who I was. And I made a choice. I said, I don't want to be that anymore. And I made a conscious choice and effort to start changing that. And it took investing in myself, without a doubt. I mean, I've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars within my education. So when you get back to catalysts for change, I've educated myself. I have a psych nursing background, so I've got the physical, I've got the mental, the emotional, and the physical down. I've got masters in emotional trauma release. I've got all these things because I was curious for myself to shift that. And then once I started getting all of those skill sets, it was like, wow, I'm a service, I'm of service orientation. How can I serve others? How might I serve others in the space? And then I started giving back. And until I gained my own value and self-worth back, I mean, I was giving it away, giving it away, giving it away. I'm like, okay, I think I got this one nailed. Mm-hmm. And then it was like, okay, I could start charging for this. But it took me a while to really put a value on it, because I had come from the victim mentality. Yeah. But when you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, you'll choose to change.
Yeah. So. Well, and you have a choice to change. That's the beauty of free will. We have the choice to change. So it's either you're going to stuck in victim mentality, easy to blame. It's so easy. Listen, I watched my mom do that for years, and my brother. Yeah. Blame, point a finger. They did this. Oh, the cops are after me again, and I didn't do it. And you're like, and all of that. And I think when you watch that, you either look at that, like you're saying, you either look at that and you say, okay, is that really life, or is there evidence? Can I find evidence to the contrary? Can I find something different where people's lives are working differently, right? And then you could say it doesn't. It's such an energy drain to point the finger, right? And to put everything outside yourself. Because when you know that you've got, okay, wait a minute, I've got the ability within myself to make those changes.
Yeah.
Then you've got that ability.
Yeah, but most people
takes work.
Don't know that. Yeah, most people don't realize they have it within, because they're so busy looking, especially a victim. You're so busy. I mean, I was there. I was it. I know that. I was so busy looking to point fingers, but when you're pointing fingers, you got three coming back. So when you're sitting there in a spiritual context, we mirror each other. So when you see it out there, chances are you got it. When you spot it, you got it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So when you start identifying it, it's like, whoa, time out. Perhaps maybe that gives me pause to look at and say, wow, if I'm calling them a name, I must be seeing that within myself. And again, to thine own self be true. The truer you are to yourself, and sometimes the truth sucks, but you have the power and the free will to choose to change that context. And that just kept me on the straight and narrow by continually doing that, and kept me, without beating myself up, kept me tranquil in a calm, grounded space to say, okay, this isn't working. What can I do differently that's going to make a difference? Because my ultimate goal is to serve others. I can't serve others to the level that I personally want to serve unless I start loving myself. And that's really what it always gets bound to, is self-love. And you stop pointing fingers out at everybody else and you point them back at yourself and say, okay, what can I do to choose to change this? And not is still a choice.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yep. No is not a 4-letter word. I've heard that you can, like, it's okay to say that.
Yep.
I remember telling my mom that and saying, it's okay to say no, Mom. It's okay to say no, you're not going to do. But I had to learn that because I was the one people, it's like, I can do everything. I can do everything. I can make sure it's all done. I can sign up for the PTA. I can run the 6th grade play. I can be part of this. I can do this auction and work full time and raise my 4 kids by myself. And you start to go, why am I doing this? But you brought up the point, like, you have your kids looking at you. And that is listen, you want to talk about a big why. When you look and you say, I've got 4 little beings looking at me. And now, of course, my beings, as I told you before we started recording, they call me on my stuff. They're like, why is that coming up for you, Mom? And I'll be like, I taught him too well, right? But you're kind of like, okay, this is great because if I had, like, my mom didn't know that, it's just part of us evolving. And I think obviously our society is a little bit more open to, okay, what's really going on here? What's running the show? Right. What is our body telling us? We know our cells can regenerate. We know that we can take a look at things, and stress and anger and all that stuff can be so internalized that it can cause problems for us. I remember when I really first learned, gosh, I was probably 17, 18, about the power of your subconscious mind. Mm-hmm. And I thought, oh, this is great, man. I can program it. I can do this and that. But then there was a time where I got angry with it because I'm like, what the heck? Why can't I just get the two aligned? Why can't I get my conscious with my subconscious aligned? Because if I can get them aligned, boom, sky's the limit. I can do anything. Exactly. And it was just like, I almost had this friction because I was trying so hard to get them aligned that, you're trying too hard, right?
Right. As I hear that, it's like, I remember a time with my mother. I said my mother was trying all the time, and every other word is, I'm trying this, I'm trying that, I'm trying that. Well, in the world of communication, trying is a cop-out for being responsible, and it throws you back to victim. And I remember saying to her, Mom, think of something you really want. She says, I can't afford anything. And I'm like, yes, you can. Think of something you really want. And she says to me, I want to take my girlfriend out to lunch. That would make me feel really good. I said, okay, every time you say the word try, it comes out of your mouth, and it's the honor system. Every time you say that, put 25 cents into a jar. And it's funny because it wasn't a jar. She put it into a antique, what with the little angels with the fingers, China kind of, fine China kind of thing.
Like a Limoges thing?
Right, which I now have, by the way, just saying. But I said, put 25 cents in there. And she called me after a few weeks and she said, Karen, she said, I took my girlfriend out to lunch. It was amazing. And I'm not using the word try anymore. And I'm like, really?
That's great.
I had somebody in one of my mastermind groups, and she would drop the F-bomb all the time. So I did the same thing with her. I said, are you really committed to that? You're in business, so you're really committed to that. No, it's just a habit. And I'm like, okay, 25 cents in the jar. What do you want, right? So sometimes playing the game will keep the significance out of it, which keeps you calm and tranquil, right? There's no significance. You're playing a game. If you mess up, you start over. It's not a big deal. And that's pretty much how I've taken life on. It's like, you put your best foot forward. doesn't work, attempt something else. Or, it's all data. It's all responses, and then more importantly, how does it feel? When you really tap into the feeling of it, that's where your intuition starts really getting fine-tuned, and you could really start reading yourself. You are a pendulum. Your body is a pendulum. And there are times at the grocery store, I'll sit there online and like, okay, that chocolate bar, I'm not a big chocolate fan, so I don't do it too often. But gee, I might be in that mood for chocolate. Is that really something I really want? And I'll listen to my body. It's like, no, not really. And I'm like, okay, I don't even, I can walk away from it. It could be used with anything because I trust my body now, and I know my body well enough. I know my mind well enough. And sometimes it plays tricks, and then I have to just check in with myself. And it keeps shifting energy, everything is energy. So.
Well, and sometimes it plays tricks because I do think, the mind's very tricky, right? It's designed to keep us comfortable, safe, and
safe. Absolutely.
Yeah. And so it is very tricky. And I think we do have to pay attention. I think that's where being present and paying attention to what we're saying, the words we're saying. I love that you use put 25 cents in a jar, and also reward. What's the reward for that? Because I remember in Toastmasters, they used to put 10 cents into the jar if you said or and you had to pay into this jar, right? And then I believe at the end, I can't remember what we did with it, but it was a great idea. And I did remember using that at some point with my kids when they would say some word. I think my youngest son used the word can't a lot until my now ex-husband had a great idea too. He went to the dictionary and he crossed off the word can't. So if you open the dictionary in my house, there's no word can't. And he would use other words, but he would never use the word can't. And there was a time when they were saying certain things and we'd say, put money in the jar because you cannot get what you want if you continue to pull yourself in with that word. And it's important to pay attention to those things so you do catch yourself. Absolutely. Because like you said, we do get to make a decision. That's it. We get to make a decision if we want to change.
Exactly. And your mind is always listening. So if you tell yourself you can't, then your brain is saying, I can't do that. And it's going to look for the evidence to create that you can't do that. So that's why your words become really potent. Your words are your wand. Your words will create abracadabra, brings it into fruition. Yeah. So it's really getting present. Once you start really getting present to who you are and what you want, that's where it really starts fine-tuning all these little tweaks and adjustments, listening to your body. If it's telling me not to, I could be on the cusp of diabetes, then I'm obviously not going to have the sugar. You're listening to your body. If you have it once and you feel horrible, your body's talking to you, right? The same thing with your words. If it's not feeling well and it's like, oh, I can really do this, but I'm believing I can't do it anyway, because then you get to prove to yourself like anything is possible, but we become fearful of the unknown and those blind spots that we don't know what we don't know. And, sometimes if you think of a sailor going through the mist, you set your course, your destination, whatever it is, you're not always going to see the land, right? But in your heart of hearts, if I continue this way, I'm going to get to where I'm going. And if you don't, I call it trimming the sails. You just set a different 2-millimeter course. Will take you on a huge trajectory if you keep on it. So
I think we have to redefine realistic for ourselves, because I think there's just so much talk about what's realistic and what's not. And when you're setting goals or when you're doing this, and it's kind of like, wait a minute. Who's really in charge here? And what do I really want? But you said it a minute ago. What do you want? And I think that's a big thing, because and why I say redefine what's realistic is because I think a lot of times what I have found is that oftentimes and I know I did this, I knew what I wanted, but then it's almost like your mind goes, but what do you think you can get? And it's kind of like, oh, that's a slippery slope. You have to pay attention and just say, I'm going to keep stretching. I'm going to keep stretching. And if I say I want, X amount, or I want to do this, okay, triple that, make it more, whatever, just to stretch yourself into that field of possibility.
Exactly. Yeah, I couldn't agree more, because it's always a stretch. But then I look at it also, it's a game of life. And if I don't play in it, right, I'm going to be frozen in time and nothing's going to get done. If I say I want $50,000 in 3 months, am I going to sit there and just pretend it's just going to come to me? No, I have to take some sort of action. But if I want to play and go traveling, well, maybe my stretch might be $60,000, so I could still keep 50 in the bank and know that I have 10 to play with. Yeah, it's a stretch, but then it becomes a game because I really want to travel.
Yeah.
So, what do you really want? Most people don't know what they want. They know from experiences what they don't want because they were hurt by it. Right? They got hurt, and you made it mean that hurt, whatever made it mean, rather than looking at the hurt, saying, "I was hurt." I mean, I went through a divorce. I was hurt by that. He did what he did. Takes two, right? So I have to be responsible for my portion of it as well. I did what I did. And this is where it became a little easier for me to forgive. You don't forget, but you forgive, right? And so I can move on and say, okay, I have this experience. Does it mean that I'm never going to date again or I'm never going to have a man in my life again? No, because he's not the same person. And I know that I definitely don't want those characteristics again. So now my tuner is a little more tuned into what I do want. So this way, when it shows up, I recognize it. If it shows up and I'm still in the, I don't want this, I'm never going to see what I do want. I'm never going to be present to all those people that potentially have passed that might be amazing, incredible people.
Yeah.
So
exactly. And you're also a different person too.
And
you're coming at it with as a different individual.
Absolutely. But again,
I always tell people that they should, people don't often know what they want because we're so conditioned. I mean, let's face it, we're conditioned to, you get this, this, and this, and you couldn't possibly make that amount. I mean, nobody does that in that kind of line of work, and that's ridiculous. And it's like, you can always find evidence. I was telling you, Google it. You can find evidence all around you of people that are living the life that you want and having a great relationship and have a loving family and are doing the kind of work that they want, making the impact, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
But you can always find that evidence. But I think it's, if you aren't sure, start with what you don't want, because it's a lot easier to see what you do want if you know what you don't want.
Exactly.
And then you can move forward from there.
That's one of the exercises that we do in our sessions. It's like take a piece of paper, fold it in half, list all the things you don't want, and then what's the opposite of that, and list them on the other side. And you'll be surprised at how much you actually want. Realizing it.
Exactly. But then tricky little mind says, maybe not that. I don't know about that. And that's where you have to just really stay, okay, wait a minute. I call it being prayed up. You've got to just stay, okay, I'm going to be present. I got to be prayed up. I got to pay attention to what's going on. And then, like you said, it's taking some form of action, because I think for a while there, especially with certain books and things that came out, I think it was very easy for people to get off course and just say, I'm just going to affirm my way there. I'm going to put it on my vision board. And it's like, that's great because it gets the internal. This is the thing. It starts to change the internal, and everything is created first in the mental realm and then in the physical realm. So the whole purpose of the vision board, it helps you to start, okay, I'm going to make some shifts here internally. But you have to take that action, because that's, like you said, you get the data, you get some clarity around things.
Exactly. And what you focus on expands. So if you put it on a vision board, let's say, and you're looking at the vision board and you're looking at the vision board, what you're actually telling your brain is, that's it. I'm focusing on that. Whether you're consciously doing it, your subconscious is working in the background, right? And the big end is there's got to be action taken towards that big thing. So if that big thing in the middle is 50 grand in 3 months or whatever your goals are, what actions are you going to take? And then it gets down to really looking at it as milestones, reverse engineer it. What's it going to take in those 3 months to get you to where you want to be at that time, and then stretch yourself. And the stretch is the fun part. It's like, come on, if you can get this far, one more, and just play. And then all of a sudden, you're like, now you're here. You're not capping yourself at a ceiling. You're breaking through the ceiling. And if that's possible, what else is possible?
Yeah.
And now you're telling your brain that anything is possible. when I step out of that old belief and patterning of it's got to look a certain way because I was told it's like, and I was talking to somebody recently, oh, my parents told me to do this or they made me go into this career. And I'm like, okay, and you agreed to it. And now where are you at? And what do you really want? Like what fills you with joy? Because when you really get the sense of feeling of joy, you're on course.
Yeah. Yeah, that's your body telling you that you are on purpose. You're where you're supposed to be when you can do it and you can completely get lost in it, right?
Absolutely.
I like to call it the ladder of success because I kind of feel like, okay, if I can get to this rung, then I can get to the next rung and then I can get to the next rung. But but I also think it's important to mix it with emotion because I think, that's the language that speaks to us. And that's what our subconscious can hang on to that emotion and go, oh, okay, this is, and the why, that's the why part of it. For me, for so long, it was my 4 kids. It was like, oh, I'm going to show you, not by just holding back, right?
God, and it was my three kids, and and it's so interesting because I keep saying I serve women, entrepreneurial women, and who shows up as male all the time because they get off track of what they want, or just as you had articulated, it's the passion, purpose. They grew up in a society where you're not supposed to feel because it's unmanly for you to cry and have an emotion. So now I'm teaching that it's okay to have emotion, and if you want to cry, okay, it's a tissue. I don't have a problem with that, and I'm not judging. More importantly, I'm not judging. And when you give yourself permission to feel, if you've never felt before, it could suck at the beginning. It could be very emotional. I mean, I cry. My girlfriend, I remember going through my divorce and my girlfriend says to me in the midst of it all, Carol, what's your dream? Like, what's next for you? And I was like, my what? She says, your dream. And I was like, I had no relatedness to dream to the point where I had to look it up in the dictionary. Dictionary became my best friend after that. I looked it up and I went, oh my God. And I just cried my eyes out, but I emoted it, right? Energy is energy, emotion. And I just like cried my eyes out. And then I was like, okay, now I'm going to create a dream now that I know what it is. So I had the choice to choose to either stay in that stuck space or say, I'm going to create a dream. It could be so far-fetched, and I could always trim my sails along the way if it's not serving me or not making me feel good.
Right. You have the choice. You can always readjust as you're going through things.
Totally.
I love that. What's next for you?
A few things. I'm talking more live on stage and on people's shows. I am writing. I'm finishing up the last. I keep saying the last. I better not say that again. Never say never. Somebody asked me to do another collaborative book, and I'm saying to myself, I'm not going to do this anymore. And there I am doing one more, just one more. My next thing is to do my own book. I have one of my own.
You have one, Ripple Effect?
I do. Yeah. I have 5 Ways to Create a Ripple is my first. And then the rest have all been international best-selling, collaborative, got me out there on the board. The next one is really going to be, it's going to be called Spiraling Up, is what my thought is right now. And has been coming to me for quite a while. I'm going to do that. I'm actually in the process I've been working on a card deck for many years, and I've been up in my mind so long, like I was got to look a certain way and feel a certain way and have so much energy in it, that I just got back from I'm part of a creativity community. I've been traveling globally doing this for years, and I've been testing and seeing how it lands and tweaking it. And now it just came back where it got so many rave reviews in a shorter period of time. So I'm going to package that. So my goal is to have it be in every household where you can tap into your subconscious mind and get the answers you need. And it's been very, very, very successful. So I'm working on that right now. And then a course to follow up after that. At least that's what I'm thinking in the moment. You never know with Karen. I'm an ideator. I get ideas all the time and a creative. So
Yeah. But you're taking action. That's the good part. Like you're getting that down. Like you just said, okay, I put it out there and tested instead of just sitting on it in your head and thinking, I don't know, I could do this. I could do that. I mean, how many times have I seen people that do that? And it's just like, and then you just play around ping ponging it in your head and you never do anything. But at least you're getting the data that you need so you can say, I can move forward with this.
Exactly.
I love that. Well, Karen, thank you so much for being here. We will link information down below on how to get a hold of you and how to connect with you. And I love it because really, I think what you're doing now is you're nursing from the inside out. You're healing people from the inside out
Absolutely.
rather than from the outside in.
That's exactly what it is.
Yeah. And that's so key to helping people change and get what they want in life. So thank you.
Thank you. What a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks so much for joining me here today. If you want some help achieving your goals, you can grab the success bundle that is linked down below, or you can join the challenge that I have coming up. The challenge is designed to help you align with your goals, get out of your head, get into action so you can achieve what it is that you say you want. You have the ability. Let's just get going and get it done. I'll be back again soon with another episode of Shift or Get Off the Pot.